Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to the 2022 Waterworks Unlimited exhibition. It's a wonderful, very unique exhibition this year, and it was juried by Michael Hernandez, who is a wonderful artist and instructor. He gave a 2-day workshop at the beginning of this week that, from what I've heard, was just fabulous. So Mike can't be with us right at the very beginning of this reception because he's out of town and he had a previous commitment, but he will join us in time to talk about the winning award paintings at the end of the show. So we expect him to get online with us probably in about a half an hour or so. But we decided to do something a little different this year, and I'd like to introduce the two panelists who are going to help me do that. The first panelist is Charlene Burley, and Charlene Burley is the actual chair of the Waterworks Unlimited show this year, and she's got a few words she'd like to say about the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. And I am the member show chair, and I'd like to thank all the volunteers that helped put the show on, and there were many. No one person could at all begin to do this show. We had 362 entries from 24 states and 8 countries, and Mike had no easy job narrowing those down to 60 entries that we will show you tonight. And from there, he had to select 13 award winners with over $6,000 worth of prizes. So I hope you enjoy the show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you, Charlene. And now I'd like to introduce Debbie Roscoff, past president of Northwest Watercolor Society and also our webmaster and website liaison, not webmaster, but website liaison, who, you know, has her fingers in every Northwest Watercolor Society pie. But anyway, Debbie, take it away. You're muted, Debbie.
Of course. Thank you, everybody. Glad to help out tonight. I just wanted to say we're so glad you all are here, and I'm glad to help us present these wonderful paintings from our very, very awesome and multi-talented NWWS members. It'll be a great night.
It will. And I agree with Debbie. This is a very interesting and unique show, and I think you're all going to really enjoy it. So what we're doing this year to make up for this little bit of time that Mike can't be with us at the beginning of the reception is we asked the accepted artists to write a statement about what inspired them to paint this painting in the first place. What was their emotion? Why were they moved to paint this painting? And we got them from everyone, and we are going to, as we show the slideshow of the winning art, we're going to read these statements to give you a better idea of what you're looking at and why the artist painted them. Then Mike will join us to present the award winners towards the end of the presentation. And I do have one announcement to the award winners when you find out who you are. Please be on the lookout for an email from the awards chair, Eileen McMacken, because she needs to send you an email and have you confirm your mailing address so that she can ship you your awards. They're all ready to go. She'll be shipping them out after this reception, but she will send you an email first. Please confirm your address so she makes sure she sends them to the right place. And finally, please write any questions or comments that you have about tonight's show in the chat room. And we will be asking those questions of Mike or making those comments at the end of the show. We will not be doing it during the presentation itself. So I'll be monitoring the chat room and I'll check it at the end of the show. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start the show.
John Adams, River Run. In my art, I aim to express qualities of light and color that I find beautiful and engaging. For this painting, River Run, I was inspired by the river flowing freely through the landscape. The scene was serene with snowy mountain peaks in the distance. My focus was to share the sense of stillness and beauty found by the river on a winter day. Christine Alfrey, Ringmaster's Coat. I create paintings with as much childlike freedom as I can gather from my memory as an adult, encumbered in an adult world. I think as I create. How can I think and paint with the freedom that I had as a child, unencumbered, going to magical places like a circus where impossible things happen, where you can dream and laugh a little, dance a little, and twirl around?
Debbie, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I guess I'm a slow learner tonight. This painting is entitled Papergate, and it is painted by Giovanni Bazzarani. Giovanni writes, when the light and shadows create and cut the details of a subject, it inspires me a lot. Like many artists of the past, including Raphael, I have walked through this arch. Doors must not only be opened, but must also be crossed. And this always represents a dream I've chased throughout my life. Angela Barbie writes about her painting titled, In the End, There Was Light. Angela says, when there are heavy clouds hanging over me, when things are not easy or smooth, when the world seems to go crazy, I stick to a little light. It helps me to keep my faith. This light I represent in my painting. And in the end, there's always light.
This is Strings and Roots by Joe Atkinson Belmont. During the time we lived in Mexico, I fell in love with the colors and foods found there. Being lured into my favorite shop by the artful display of items, I hope to capture the moment when I experienced these wonderful colors, contrasts, textures, and shapes. This is by Debbie Brunch, entitled 2020 Remote School. 2020 Remote School is a painting of my daughter who, despite the frustrations of a lockdown and challenges of remote school, just rolled her sleeves up and did the best she could during the pandemic. Through this painting, I wanted to capture her strength and I can do this attitude.
This is Jewels of the Garden by Kathy Byrne. She writes, I always have been inspired by my niece's dedication to her garden. Visiting her last spring, we harvested various varieties of carrots. While rinsing the carrots, this image inspired me. What drew me in was the variety of shapes, composition, different colors, and the challenge of painting something I never conceived as a subject of a painting. This is Nostalgic Jars by Oral Carper. Nostalgic Jars creates a beautiful portal to the past by providing a starting point for memories of nostalgic times. The transparency of the blue-green canning jars used many years ago encourages the mind to remember nostalgic times. Art provides tremendous opportunity to remember and enjoy life's treasured moments.
Searching is painted by Kathleen Conover. Kathleen says, COVID brought in changes and left me searching, especially in my art. The imagery in my searching series holds personal meaning, which includes the blackbird as messenger, the origami crane as a prayer for peace, the dragonfly representing our ability and fragility in life, and the horse as a universal symbol for our journey. And John Ediger painted Go In Home. John says, I found this beautiful tractor in a town called Pope Valley, California. Going Home was surrounded by a multitude of old, rusty, broken down tractors of all makes and conditions. What caught my eye about this particular tractor was the way the sun was hitting it and the complex patterns of shade and shadow. I have fond memories of old tractors from my grandparents' farm in Nebraska.
Alexandra Iyer painted Plein Air. I often prefer to paint alla prima, Italian for all at once, using live models to inspire my artistic eye and create enchanting and unforgettable portraits. I capture a moment in time and share my mind's unique sight of the subject. And Amalia Fish painted Sunrise on the Gorge. My family has a home in the gorge, and I spend a week there every summer. For my piece, Sunrise on the Gorge, I photographed the sunrise from the Washington side of the Columbia. I loved the light and wanted to paint the contrast of the scene.
This is By the Dawn's Early Light by Gary Friedman. This painting started with a quest to merge traditional and non-traditional watercolor techniques, transparent versus opaque paint, the clear translucence of the sky opposed by thick layers of rock and water, the glittering white of the paper. It felt like a battle to achieve victory amidst chaos, doubt, and even despair. This painting is triumph, victory, the glory of painting done purely from imagination. This is Joy Overcomes Adversity by Angie Granger. She writes, my work derives inspiration from the magic and wonders of nature. My current explorations are in discovering how elements of nature and texture react in watercolor, leaving beautiful and unique patterns on the paper. With this piece, my goal was to speak to my belief that finding joy helps us make it through hard times.
Cottonwood Dawn is the title of this painting from Ken Harvey. This particular painting is a generalization of the unreal magic occurring around me as I would be trudging through the snow to one of my favorite fishing spots at dawn. Darcy Iber writes about her painting entitled Red Ozer Dogwood. While golfing at Foster Golf Links in Tukwila, Washington, I like to take photos of the Duwamish River, animals and foliage that I encounter. I saw this red Ozer Dogwood's bright, fresh leaves against the dark thicket of Himalayan blackberry, and I knew I just had to paint it.
Janine Helton painted Everything Nice. I've painted my niece many times, so for something different, I decided to create colorful, soft shadows in the folds of her white t-shirt. Taylor is a beautiful young woman inside and out, so when Sugar and Spice and Everything Nice came to mind, I had my title. John James painted Folding Over, Spiraling Up. Folding Over, Spiraling Up is a mixed water media painting. It is part of a series that I was working on using a small silicone contour. My aim during the painting process was to feel like a kid being free with the paint and crayons and creating shapes with the contour. By doing this, sometimes magic happens and it all works.
This is The Red Tigers by Gail Johannes. She writes, I am a gardener and a photographer. Macro images reveal secrets in my garden that are easily overlooked. Paintings with careful planned edges and brilliant, clean colors are a challenge. I find the combination of these ideas compelling. They test my mettle as a painter. This is by Michelle Tabor Kimbrough, Crucian Carnival Series 27. My Crucian Carnival series came from visits to St. Croix. I call the subject Kali, painted monochromatically with that familiar red cup. I've created multiple paintings of Kali using different techniques. She's appeared in various shows, and my very first Kali was called Trope Hostess Kali. And it recently won first place in the Kentucky Watercolor Society.
This piece is from Doreen Cash Allen. Its title is Syncopated Dance. Doreen says, while painting Syncopated Dance, I wish to capture the essence of power that music can have on one's soul and life as a syncopation denotes. Strong movements or marks are accentuated by more subtle, quiet passages and vice versa. I used a limited palette to create interconnection throughout this piece. Golden Dreams is from ZZ Lai. She says, art is a means for conveying emotion. I create an atmosphere for the subject to depict the feeling through my imagination, and lighting plays a significant role in mood creation. These dreamlike mystical scenes might bring the viewers on a journey to experience the emotions evoked, whether it is happy, grouchy, joyful, or miserable.
Dancing in the Wind was painted by Diane Locati. Inspiration for this painting came from visiting the Chinese gardens in Portland, Oregon. The weeping willow tree was growing near a small pebbled walkway. For my interpretation of this scene, I decided to make the pebbles large like boulders to climb over to reach the willow tree by the water pond. Shopping in Glasgow was painted by Stacy Lund Levy. While shooting reference pictures in Glasgow, I noticed people correcting their course to avoid a large archway. This change of direction happened the split second the shopper's eyes detected the homeless man seated there. To me, this spoke volumes about human nature.
This is Broken In by Denise Marshall. She wrote, recently I became enamored with old, well-worn boots. Their history and their travels could be very interesting if only known. I'm fascinated by the varied color, texture, and undulations of the worn leather. Every pair has a backstory, and I'm trying to bring them to life with watercolor. This is On the Docks by Mark McDermott. He wrote, I walked along the dock area of Homer Spit in Alaska with my camera is specifically looking for this type of subject. Interesting compositions of ropes, chains, nets, buoys, and other rusting commercial fishing equipment were of interest to me. The strong lighting, textures, and arrangement of rope against the chain is what spoke to me in this painting.
Woven Water was painted by Denise McFadden. Woven Water is two watercolor paintings cut apart and woven together. The Pacific Ocean seagulls are at the water's edge, and although the painting was serene on its own, I felt that weaving the two mismatched paintings would show movement in the water when the shapes overlapped from the diagonal cuts. This piece is entitled Intertwined and painted by Sylvia Monghay. She says, our life as an artist is full of pages of sketchbooks, drawings, colors, brushstrokes, impressions that intertwine and weave between them to achieve our own identity.
This painting is titled Shifting Horizon, and it's by Kathleen Mooney. Art, artifact, archaeology, abstraction, all continually inspire. Big shapes, relationships, and time listening provide creative framework. Dynamic balance, shifting viewpoints, and ancient symbols convey mystery and magic. Glowing light and deep, dark pigments celebrate complexity, contrast, and comfort. And Marla Nolan painted faces. I have been looking for faces, animals, and patterns in nature for as long as I can remember. One day at Point Lobos State Park, I stared down at the wet granite in a tide pool, admiring the colors and taking photos. When I viewed the photos later, these wonderful faces appeared.
This is Quilt Dreams by Beth Owen. I saw this cat sleeping on a beautiful, vibrant quilt made by my sister. I thought that the hints of abstract cats scattered throughout the quilt added the suggestion of what Roland, the cat, could be dreaming about, though perhaps Little Mice Dreams is more likely. This is Snow Creek by Sandra Pierce. She writes, nothing in the world is as serene as fresh fallen snow. Everything is white and clean, enhancing nature's beauty. Expanses of pure white blankets, unsullied except by animal tracks. All is quiet, no mowers, no cars. Even the birds are quiet, huddled in their roost. Silent, pure heaven. I must paint it, she writes.
George Politis painted Old Blue Door in Santorini. George says, an old door in Santorini. I found it a very hot day while walking around to find possible subjects. Something you would normally overlook, yet these subjects always attract me. I love the shadows, the contrast, the textures, and certainly the dominating blues, matching the colors of the sea and sky. Lisa Pope writes about her painting entitled Superfruit. Not only is the pomegranate considered superfruit, its beauty is reflected in vibrant red colors and juicy arils. I attempt to capture light and color that breathe life into the subjects I paint. I wish to carry the viewer on this journey with me to find interest in the ordinary.
And April Rimpo painted Sax 2. Sax 2 celebrates how Vanessa Collier's saxophone playing envelops you with joy as she roams the room playing a solo, making you feel that she is playing to each of us individually. Her music warms you as it twists and turns unexpectedly. My patterns represent the music swirling about the room. Extravagant Harvest was painted by Mary Rollins. An avid gardener all my life, my interest was captured by this massive sunflower head bowing with the weight of its seeds. I used rich, saturated colors to emphasize its dramatic shape in contrast to the muted autumn sky in the background.
This is by Jerry Ann Sabin, Canyon Series, Chasing the Light. She writes, narrow passages caress, fingertips trailing along ancient walls, stone scrubbed smooth by time, holding heat and secrets. Shifting sunlight entices, creating deep shadows that lead to dazzling brilliance. Intensely saturated colors intoxicate and pull me deeper and deeper as I chase the light. This is Susan by Jolene Sanborn. While visiting Colorado, a friend invited us to come home out to her home outside Estes Park. She wanted me to see their garden. The garden started a mile from their home, reachable via a logging road. Acres of wildflowers were everywhere. It was magnificent. It was a magnificent garden. The black-eyed Susan spoke to me and a painting was born.
And this piece is by Chris Sheridan and is entitled Lupine Ladies. Chris says, for me, lupines have been a symbol of hope and healing. 18 years ago, I survived breast cancer and painted lupines on Monhegan Island in Maine. I have been painting and trying to grow lupines ever since. I hope they bring you hope and healing too. Artist Jody Steele writes about her painting entitled Typewriter and Tapestry. One typewriter from my family has led to a collection. Luckily, they make for interesting subjects. I enjoy thinking about where they've been and all of the stories they may have written. Hopefully, through the medium of watercolor, this beautiful machine can spark some new imaginings.
Annie Strack painted Slipped Away. During the pandemic, I began a series of wildlife paintings that reflected my sudden isolation. I then became ill with cancer, and my painting Slipped Away reflects my loneliness and despair. I'm better now, but my painting is a reminder of how quickly and easily our lives can slip away. Eugenia Zonevska painted Roses. I painted this vase of roses as an homage to my home country of Bulgaria. Bulgaria is well known for its roses. The fragrance from the Rose Valley can be smelled through the region during the summer months. Although I am far from my birthplace, I am reminded of it daily with beautiful roses in my garden.
This is Light on the Hill Once More by Catherine Wedge. The inspiration for Light on the Hill Once More came from a visit to a friend's cabin. I awoke on my first morning to a sunlit view outside my window. In this painting, I wanted to capture that sense of light coming through the trees and down the hill. This is Iris 2 by Glenda Weibel. It was a cold, dreary December day, and I was inspired to paint an iris on a warm, sunny day. I've also been experimenting with ways to free watercolor paintings from being framed under glass. This painting uses archival tissue paper, canvas, and is finished with varnish. This technique maintains the freshness of watercolor without glass.
Airport South, Georgetown is the title of this painting from Roger Whitlock. Roger says, I had been painting plein air in Georgetown the day before, and as I was heading back to my car, my vision was sharpened by a morning of painting outdoors. It was hot, the sky was an intense blue. Across Airport Way, the old brewery above a tangle of wires, lining the sidewalk ahead, cafes, bars, shops, a parked Escalade. I saw this painting and I was going to paint it the very next day. And Sandy Winfrey writes about her painting, Scalloped Blue Dish. She says, I live in Alaska where the winters are long and dreary, which makes me attracted to bright colors. I became intrigued by bright glass, their curves, and overlapping transparent shadows. This is what I hope the viewer will find interesting.
And our last painting before we present the awards is by Suze Wolf, called Winter Rim. I began painting burned forests in 2008. First entire landscapes, but soon individual charred trees. They are all the same and all different. The light, fire physics, tree structures, they are my literal metaphor for climate crisis. Collaborating with scientists has given me opportunities to speak with many varied audiences. So everyone, Mike has joined the meeting now. I'll give you a little bit of introduction about Mike, and then at the end of the presentation, he can close and we'll put him on the screen. So a native Angelino, Mike Hernandez is a plein air painter skilled in gouache, acrylic, and oil. Mike has long explored the foundations of color and light, and he always strives to find the beauty in the ordinary. After studying at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, Mike worked at DreamWorks Animation as a production designer, art director, concept artist. His projects include many of today's classic animated movies. Mike is a much sought after workshop instructor, and his works have been featured in several online publications, as well as galleries and private collections around the world. Welcome, Mike, and he will give his expert opinion of why he chose the award winners in this show. Take it, Mike.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, everyone. It's really good to be here. It's a pleasure, and I'm honored to have been chosen to juror and to speak for you guys. It's been a real interesting array of works. I've never juried a show with so many selections. So anytime I get selected for something like this, I'm always asking myself, and I think to myself, what is it I'm going to learn from doing something like this? Because for me, it's always about learning and what art can do and can give for me. So you guys give me quite a bit. So thank you very much. So let's talk about returning home. I believe that's going to be the first one in our selections, correct?
There it is.
There it is. So returning home was interesting. There's a lot of lost and found details of lights and shadows, as well as the familiar details of architecture. And it's got a very dreamlike feeling to it. I mean, I love things like this because, you know, when I look at it, it's not so much the literal, but it's like, it is very dreamlike in the sense that there are certain overtones in there that are obvious, the windows, the steps, and then there's other things like the drips and things. So it evokes a lot of emotion for me, and it takes me back to dreams that I had that were a lot like this. And like, there's a lot of paintings in this show that did do that for me, that took me back to emotions that I had, whether it was a recent dream or when I was a kid. That's the thing that's so fascinating about art and looking at other people's art. Like there was a few pieces in this show that took me back to feelings I haven't felt until I was maybe 5 or 8 years old. It's like, wow, how does a painting do that? How does it evoke that kind of response for me and that type of familiarity? And this is one of those images that didn't take me back to when I was a kid, but it took me back to a lot of dreams I've had about familiar places and that familiar sense of light and shadows. So it's such a beautiful painting, and I love that wet on wet treatment that that's been used in this one. What's really great about it is in art, and in specifically in watercolor, it's so important to be able to lose a lot of your details. I find that people want to express every detail, every edge, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But a lot of times, when it comes to architecture, by giving the viewer everything, you give them so many things to have to think about. But in this particular piece, by allowing the medium to kind of take on its personality, which is that wet on wet, that it's a water-based medium, losing those details on the right-hand side relieves the viewer of the burden of having to stare off into the right and focus up into the upper left corner of what's going on in the painting. So it's a beautifully executed painting, really beautiful that they use that how to use that wet on wet technique, as well as using some of those straight lines. The lost and found quality of both light and detail is really present in this piece, so it's beautiful. Okay. The next piece, Escape Plan, I believe is the next one.
Isn't it showing, Mike?
I don't see it on my end. There it is.
You have
So yeah,
you
so
must
this,
have a delay or something there because it's definitely
I
up.
might. So I'm currently in the Turks and Caicos over near the Bahamas. So it might be a little bit, it might be a little bit off and on. So give me a little bit of time between the slides. This one is really, really cool too, as well. It's such a, I'm always looking for that unexpected response to artwork, which is really beautiful. For me, myself, I'm always painting the given landscape, but I'm always looking for the unexpected. And things like this teach me a lot about how I can approach my art. And again, that's what I'm saying about this show is, what will it teach me? And this painting right here taught me a lot. There's something really beautiful about the subtleties in those grays, warm and cool gray variation. And there's a lot that's been held back in the painting. A lot of times people want to put their strongest foot forward with color. And express as much as they can. People tend to think the more color I put into a painting, the more I'm giving the viewer. Well, in essence, this one's great. It's all about restraint. The restraint in color says a lot more about the expression, right? There's a lot of subtlety in expression. Expression sometimes gets overpowered by color. And in this one here, the color is very subtle, which allows the expression to pull forward. And I thought that was really beautiful. A lot of interesting arrangement of shapes and proportions, beautiful subtleties in the grays. The finer details are also so interesting, and they're very narrative when you look at them. I'm not quite sure what they mean, but they evoke a lot of interest and to try to figure out what's going on in these real small pieces of detail. There looks like there's some handwriting in there, straights and curves, all that stuff makes it even more appealing. It begs of the viewer to want to know what's going on in this image. But even if you didn't know exactly what it was saying, it's not dissatisfying, it's purely satisfying. It's a beautiful look into the expression with the limitations of color and the limitations of detail. So it's so well done. And now let's go on to the next one. Light rail construction. And I'll give it a little bit of time. There it is. So this one here, the technique evokes such an emotional response. The painting has a boldness, and you can really feel the weight and the scale of that location. Using that type of boldness between dark and light contrast really gives you that boldness on that location. I really, really feel the weight. And it also, again, it's another one of those pieces that feels very dreamlike. It has a familiarity to me, like I've been there before in a dream when I look at something like this. And the hesitation to use color anywhere else in the painting is also highly sophisticated. There's the one color accent on the bottom. That is possibly and probably some sort of a street sign. But that says a lot about the sophistication of the viewer to have that hesitancy to give the viewer, the painter, to give the viewer too much information, to give the viewer just enough. By limiting the amount of information, you give the viewer a more powerful response in this painting. And I really felt it. I kind of felt like, wow, I am there in this piece, and I am feeling the boldness of that location, the scope and the scale of that specific spot. Really beautifully executed. And again, going with less color and less detail gives the viewer, at least for me, a lot more connection emotionally. So beautifully executed. And the next one should be Short. Give it a second to come in. So Shorebird is another beautiful execution of detail and wonderful technique. Such a beautiful controlled technique and such a beautiful attention to detail. And something I guess is more about that control. The danger of having this much control in a painting is you lose the viewer's sense of expression if you have too much attention to detail and color, because you know how to control it. But this one is so beautifully controlled. I love the interruption of that one piece of wood that cuts through all the rocks. And then those beautiful color harmonies within the stone details. Such a beautiful executed painting, very well done. There's a lot to say about control in that medium. For watercolor specifically, it takes a lot of technique to be able to do things like this. So really well done. I spent a lot of time just enjoying things like all the little bark details and the wood grain, all the different textures and all the different types of rocks in there. These are things that take me back to the times when I lived in Washington. I used to live in Seattle. I lived in Gig Harbor, and I used to take the ferry over to Whidbey Island all the time. And I would be on the shores of the beaches there. And it reminds me of being in a place like this with all the driftwood and all the rocks. And if you just spend enough time looking at this stuff, you get a sense of appreciation. At first glance, all the rocks on the beach look the same color. But if you spend enough time on that shoreline, you'll notice what's been presented in this painting, that there is a lot of beautiful color. Every rock has its own personality, has its own vein and strain of texture through it. So this is one of those pieces that reminded me of what it was like to live in the Pacific Northwest, and to be able to appreciate those finer details in life. So this is one of those paintings that takes the time to appreciate those details. Beautifully executed. Thank you, Sherry. The next one is Flamboyant. And I'll give it a second to come in. Again, an interesting array of shape and color harmonies. So well balanced. Straights against curves is the first impression I got of something like. So as I teach, when I teach as an artist, those are one of the things that I push as a designer, which is make sure you have a good balance of straight shapes and a good balance of curve shapes. And this one's beautiful because it's that immediate contrast between circles and straights and curves. But I love the overlapping harmonies of all of those circles. And then to put on top of that, that threaded harmony and fiber of color and texture that runs through this whole painting just takes it that much further. It's really difficult to be able to execute a painting like this without it being too busy. And this one isn't busy at all. You know, the impression is still there, the impression of color and that impression of overall detail, and the rhythms of those textures are so beautiful. Your eyes just swim through all of those circles. Really beautifully done. So well done. Beautiful. The chaos, by the way, is another one of those things I wanted to say about that painting. The chaos is so beautifully balanced. And as well as the next painting that we're actually going on to, the Hidden Reflection. It's another one of those paintings that at first glance has a real heavy sense of chaos, right? And then whenever we get to outdoor nature and things like that, it is very chaotic and it's really challenging. Usually as painters, we tend to look for things that aren't as chaotic. We look for the lesser of those things. This is beautifully executed, Hidden in Reflections. At first glance, it's chaos. But within the chaos, there's a beautiful sense of organization in there. Beautifully patterned first read with such an intimate second read. I love those hidden blue-green color accents, that hesitancy to put too much color. It's such a beautiful statement from the artist to be able to say, hey, I could put color everywhere in this painting, but there's only a little hint in the bird's beaks of those grays that kind of go cool. A little bit in that one wing of the mother, and then the mallard duck. I believe they're all mallard ducks. The duck in the closer far left here, that nice one single statement. It's really beautiful when artists learn the art of restraint, right? Restraint is a huge quality that I look for in artwork. It's easy for us to take every color in the palette and decide we want to put it everywhere in a painting. It's highly sophisticated to learn the restraint of deciding when and where to put color in a painting. So this is one of those examples where that restraint pays off. It's really beautifully done. Thank you, Charlene. So Divide and Conquer should be the next one. and it's taking a little time. There it is. So to go divide and conquer, this one is really gorgeous, just beautiful. This one is a gorgeous palette and design balanced on the golden proportion and the golden mean. If you look at it, there's that, it's a close to like 70-30. This is more like 75-25 proportion, pretty close to the golden proportion. It's such a beautiful statement of those two basic proportions in there. But I love how there's an overall control of the palette and the overall control of the color as well. This painting evoked some kind of interesting, like dreamlike response from me as well. Those little hints, those tiny blues, there's a familiarity in it that's really interesting to me. It feels personal, which is interesting. I look at this piece and I go, well, it must have been personal to the painting, to the painter and the artist who did it, to Tony. But for me, it feels personal when I look at it. That's a really strong connection. A lot of times I look at work and I feel like it's the artist's personal statement. And it's very personal to them. But for some reason, this particular painting became personal to me, which is really interesting. Because I always strive for unexpected things like this. I always strive for trying to figure out how to find that delicate balance and proportion, and making sure that I can find that real simple essence within a color palette without using all of the colors in the rainbow. So this is so sophisticated and beautifully balanced. So good job, Tony. Thank you. The next one should be, I don't speak Mandarin. And it's still slowly coming in on my end. There it is. So I don't speak Mandarin. Wonderful shape and rhythm dynamics in this one. The rhythm of those shapes are just beautiful. Beautifully balanced, so beautifully within a burnt sienna palette. So it seems as if you only used one color to express this. A lot of people tend to think that if you give them less color and you give them less detail, you're giving them less artistic expression, when in fact, it's usually the other way around. When you remove something from the equation, it allows something else to take precedence within the statement of the artistic expression. And in this one, by not having any other color other than what looks like burnt sienna to me and black, it allows an ever-presence of the statement to become fuller in expression. So it's a really beautifully balanced painting. I love the little essence of the calligraphic vocabulary written out in the painting. I think it's really beautiful. So well done. Thank you, Kay. The next one should be Central Library.
It's up there, Mike. It's just taking some time.
There it is. Yeah, Central Library, Gordon. I mean, there were two pieces that you submitted, and I just enjoyed the two of them tremendously. I just loved looking at two of the pieces. Maybe you entered more than two, but I remember two distinctly within the technique you were using. Such an interesting design and color palette. Tells a compelling story about the sign of our times, and it tells something about technology when you look at this one. So this is one of those pieces that should be around for quite some time when people look back in our history to see what it was like within the use of technology, the use of computers, people within their time. But I just love the composition, the asymmetry of the painting, the arrangement of shapes, the character of the people. It's such a beautiful technique. Both of the paintings that were submitted were beautiful. And it was really difficult for me to pick which one was going to be the stronger of the two. I can't say this one was stronger. At some point, whenever I get that close to the two paintings that just feel the same to me, I just have to kind of close my eyes and then reopen them and look at the two at the same time and say which one speaks to me just a little bit more. And I guess it was this one here as well. And maybe it was that one character in the foreground as he's starting to exit the painting. It makes you wonder about what every one of those characters is looking at on their computer screen. Because a lot of times art isn't just about how great you can paint. It isn't about just your technique. and what you know about light and shadow, but it's also about what it evokes emotionally for you, and what it is that it teaches you. And this one taught me quite a bit. It teaches me a lot. And again, it's another one of those reasons why I become a juror in a show like this. I'm looking for the things that can teach me something. So this taught me a lot about how you can express the sign of our time. So it's a really beautiful piece, Gordon. Thank you. The next one should be Aria. Yeah, so this one is glorious. I mean, it's just elegant, right? Such an elegant, beautiful graduation of shape, light, and color. The execution of the technique and that sense of control, right? With watercolor, it's a really difficult medium to control. And I look in here and there's such a beautiful, elegant control over some of the lines in there. And if you take a look at the lines of all of those floral patterns in there, they're so beautifully controlled. And lines are a super hard thing, whether you're doing watercolor, oil, pencil, acrylic, you name it, any medium, line work is a very difficult thing to control. There's a temptation to want to use the same thickness of a line everywhere in a painting or in a sketch. But what's beautiful about this one is the weight distribution of that line changes. As things come forward, the line gets a little thicker. And then as it recedes and it goes into the depth of the piece, you lose the line, if you notice that. So from the background to the foreground, the line gains weight and presence as it comes forward, and then it goes deeper, and then you lose the line. So it's such a beautiful, elegant way to create depth in a painting. And then the cascade of that value from white and then going all the way down to the darker shadows that has those colors. It's just such a beautiful painting. You can imagine a 30 by 22 inch painting this big on the wall somewhere, just be such a gorgeous array of color and life, the life of a plant. This just says everything about the life of a botanical for me. It's just beautiful. And the control and the technique of a watercolor artist. Beautifully done, Sandy. Thank you. Seeing Red should be our next piece. So Seeing Red is another one of those examples. Again, it teaches me, because for me as a painter, I'm looking for that abstract impressionism in my work as well. There's times when I try to take a risk, and there's something within me that wants that evokes this emotional response to just putting down a shape, losing an edge, and then gaining an edge, having no contrast, and then having some contrast. That balance in there. I'm always trying to figure out what the balance of color, edge, small, medium, and large shape distribution as it relates to the literal landscape in front of me. But this one here, again, without being literal, it's an abstract, but yet it has a familiarity to it. And that's always something that's fascinating to me, is like, you know what? I love it because it feels familiar. Familiar to life for me is what it feels like. It's not familiar as another painting or another artist painting, but it feels familiar. It has a familiarity to the things that I've found beautiful in life. In fact, since I've been on this trip, I've been in the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. The past 2 days, it's been all about those botanicals and those colors and those proportions and those relationships. There's things about it that evoke that sense of beauty and balance to me. This painting does the same type of thing. Having those fine little scratched, etched marks within the painting is really interesting. It's a beautifully balanced painting. I love it. So thank you, Janet. Thank you for the experience. It's an experience to me. I look at this stuff and it's like, I get to experience something like this. It's beautiful. And then I believe this is the last one here.
No, this is the second to the last one.
Got you. Less Than Approachable. Oh yes, Less Than Approachable. This one reminds me a lot of the Bay Area artists in San Francisco. The Bay Area artists came up with that type of expression of shape and background. And then another artist that came to mind is Dan McCaw. Dan McCaw, and he has a son named Danny McCaw, but you can't tell the difference between the two artists. His son's work is a lot like his own. They've learned, they've mastered that expression between what we see in the abstract and in the literal. We love straights against curves. We love areas of calm that have no detail, areas where the eyes can rest. And then we love areas that have a lot of sophistication and detail and rhythm. This is another one of those pieces. It's beautiful because, again, it says so much without the expression on the faces of these characters. You would think as an artist that in order for you to say the most that you had to say about them, you'd have to put a face to them. And you don't need it to see the personality within these two females. It's such a gorgeous painting. I love the palette. I love the negative areas as well as I love the positive areas. And I love those small imperfections within the edges and the textures. It's really beautifully done. So thank you, Liz. And then last but not least, of course, a helping hand. It's still coming in on my end. There it is. This one here for me was culture meets artistic impressionism. I can feel the culture in it. I can feel the impressionism and then the connection between the two characters. Again, another one of those paintings that seems to be balanced on the golden proportion and the golden mean, right? But such a beautiful, unexpected way to show the elegance of friendship or the elegance of human companionship throughout the use of color, the use of the negative shapes in there, those straights against curves, and how that one curve unites the two characters. It's just so beautifully balanced. There's such a sophistication within the distribution of the black on the upper left corner that has no detail, just a few little accents. But take a look at all of the personality. They saved, he saved, or she, Karen saved all of the detail for the internal parts of the character, which may say something about the internal emotion of a person. So I thought it was really beautiful. It connected to me more than any piece did in the show that had that kind of internal connection, because as an adult now, as a person, as an artist, especially everything we've just experienced for these past 3 years, you're looking for that connection to humanity, right? There's a connection that we're trying to make. And this painting displayed to me that eagerness for that connection with humanity. And again, that expression between all the detail and the colors just said that is the expression of the humanity of the character. It's really beautifully executed. Well done. So such a gorgeous painting, and congratulations, Karen. Thank you for that. And again, I thank everyone for what all of these pieces gave me, whether they were awarded pieces or whether they were pieces that were accepted in the show, whether they were pieces that didn't quite make it in the show. It's such a difficult thing to take, many, many paintings within a show that are submitted and trying to distill it down to what you feel is going to be the one that connects with you the most. And some of it is technical, right? Some of it you look through the technical ability of the artist and say, how did they technically handle the medium? How did they technically handle the artistic expression? And then the other part is just emotional connectivity and that unexpected connection, that unexpected expression from the art. That's something that I demand of myself as well. I am harder on myself than I was harder on the show, to be honest with you. Every time I do a painting, every time I do any type of artwork, I am very difficult on myself when I look at my particular art and I say, it needs more. It didn't feel honest enough to me. It felt like I was trying to be another artist, or it felt like I was trying to be artistic, but it wasn't honest. Once in a great while, it'll come along when I'm not trying, when I don't have the tools that I'm supposed to have in my studio. In fact, sometimes I'm just not at home when it happens. It's happened when I'm on my coffee break and I happen to have a napkin and a marker, and it just happens. There's this expression that comes out. It's very honest. I'm not trying to appease or appeal to anybody. I'm not trying to get a job. I'm just trying to sell my artwork because money can sometimes get in the way, right? Merit tends to get in the way as well. We're looking for recognition. And in those moments, it's when I'm not looking for any of those things that I found that I've made the most profound expression in artwork. And sometimes it's on a table napkin. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it's once in a great, great while. And I'll see that and I'll say, geez, look at that. And it got recognized. It got recognized in a couple of shows that I did for the studio I used to work for, where I did a couple of scribbles on a napkin and they said, that's our show. That's our film. That's our character. And it always takes me by surprise that they would select that. I was like, well, I guess in the end, when I back up, I go, I guess it makes sense because I really wasn't doing it for anything other than the fact that I wanted to do it. It all comes down to, what would you do if you were locked in a home or in a studio for a year? Yes, you had food and water and survival, but you were in there and you had all the money in the world. You didn't have to worry about money. And you were just given your paint supplies. What would you do? How would you create? If it wasn't about the job, if it wasn't about money, what would you create? What is your expression, right? What connects with you? What's immediate to you? Those are the kind of things that tend to speak to me. And those are the things I looked for when I was looking at this show, is what's going to speak to me, especially given what happened in COVID. We had a lot of time to sit at home and permeate within our thoughts to say, well, now that we're not driving everywhere every day, what do we have to say? What does art say? It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be a huge message. It just has to be honest, right? In the end, I look for that honesty, and everyone's work in this show had those levels of honesty in it. It's just that some of them connected with me a little bit more than others, but they were all so damn good. A show like that teaches me so much about me as an artist. I become humble, and I thank you for the lesson in humility. So thank you for having me as a juror, and congratulations.
Well, Mike, thank you. I mean, we think you picked an extraordinary show, and your explanations of your award winners were just terrific. And sorry that it interrupted your trip, but we really appreciate you making it here tonight. Really, very much.
No apologies. This is fun. Thank you. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with you guys. And I know you guys all worked really, really hard for this show. So again, congratulations to everyone who did what you did. So thank you so much. It was beautiful.
And Mike, I want to tell you, I've heard nothing but great reports about your workshop too. So thank you for that as well. I heard it was just really wonderful.
Oh, that's really wonderful. Thank you. It really does a lot to hear that. It means a lot to me to hear that. So thank you. I enjoyed teaching it.
All right. Well, one more screen share. We're going to go back to the presentation. I just want you to hold on one second. There we go. If any of you would like to buy any other painting in here, you can please contact our treasurer, Shirley Jordan, at shirleylee136@hotmail.com. And I want to bring up our sponsors, because we had a banner year with sponsor donations this year. And they just really stepped forward and gave us just everything that we could ask for. I mean, we were so grateful with everything that happened with our sponsors this year. And before we actually close, I'd like to say that a web version of the catalog of this show will be posted on Northwest Watercolor Society tomorrow, or possibly even tonight. So if you'd like to see the catalog, you can go to the website and you can see the catalog posted. And also the catalog, we printed a beautiful catalog, and it will be sent out to all of the people who entered the show. If you entered the show, not necessarily got accepted into the show, but if you entered the show, you will get a catalog in the mail. So be on the lookout for that too. So I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. Let me just quickly check the chat room and make sure that there's nothing in the chat room that I need to talk about. Let's see. People from Linwood. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the announcement. Sound is fine for me. Is blind jury of the pieces, or does the juror know the names of the artist when judging? It's a blind jury. The jurors never know the name of the artist when they look at the paintings, unless the artist has painted their, signature real big and bold, but it's blind jurying. These inspirations read as we watch are very profound and marvelous. For me, the stories behind the works make them so meaningful as well as beautiful. I hope this is something NWWS will continue to do as exhibitions move forward. Remind people that they can visit the gallery on the website. Very good critique and choice of judge. Thank you very much. Would really like to know artist names, which Mike thought we knew. They're on there. They're on the slides. The names were at the bottom of each piece. Sorry, I'm just reading through the chats here. Thank you so much, Mike, and congratulations to all awarded artists. Hearing the artist statements was a real treat. The artist statements put a nice twist on the virtual show. Thank you for the opportunity. Loved the artwork statements as well. Thank you for letting us come see this show. Congratulations to all. So thank you, everyone. At our last reception, we didn't have a single chat at the end, so this was great. And Mike, thank you. And Debbie and Charlene, you did great. I really appreciate that you stepped up to the plate and helped me pull this together like this. And it was just very enjoyable. And the show will be up until June 30th, I believe. Yeah, June 30th. The show will be up until June 30th. The catalog will be online tonight, and there you have it. So thank you, everybody. Hope to see you next year. And don't forget, we have our open exhibition coming up in October, and the juror for that event will be Andy Evenson, and he'll be giving a workshop as well. So, all right. Thank you, Mike. Have a great time on your trip.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, everyone. Beautiful show. Good job. Congratulations.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.